In 1997, the government of Quebec implemented a sweeping family policy, rewriting the province's approach to early childhood. The centerpiece of this legislation was universal access to highly subsidized childcare, provided at a rate of $5 per day for all children under the age of 4. Evaluations of this rollout, notably a 2008 study by Baker, Gruber, and Milligan, demonstrated that the policy led to statistically significant reductions in child behavioral and developmental metrics across the province. A 2017 working paper by economists Michael Kotelenberg and Stephen Lair asks a more specific question: did this intervention impact boys and girls equally? This diagram shows two identical, overlapping Gaussian distributions representing boys and girls. To evaluate demographic impact, economists rely on the average treatment effect, or ATE. This metric tests whether the center of the curve shifts for both groups at the same rate. When relying strictly on the average treatment effect, Kotelenberg and Lehrer found no statistically significant difference between how the childcare policy affected the two genders at the mean. Relying on the average treatment effect treats the policy's impacts as symmetrical. Using this narrow lens overlooks the demographic disparities that characterize the actual results. The strategy used to reach that symmetrical conclusion is a linear difference in differences model. Researchers compared families in Quebec to those in the rest of Canada, using 7 cycles of the National Longitudinal Survey of Children and Youth. The baseline regression model isolates the intent-to-treat effect. In the findings table, female motor and social development scores show a 1.56 negative shift. Male hyperactivity and physical aggression distinctly increase. Crucially, p-values reveal the difference between boys' and girls' mean estimates remains statistically insignificant. The standard DID model restricts analysis to a uniform location shift, leaving researchers blind to shape-altering structural changes occurring within the distribution. To find the actual demographic disparities, economists need a method to measure changes in inequality and distribution without anchoring their analysis to the mean. Standard quantile treatment effects are often used to measure these shifts, but they require rigid assumptions about rank preservation across time that rarely hold true in large-scale social data. To bypass this, the authors utilized a recentered influence function, or RIF regression. This strategy allows researchers to analyze how an intervention affects the entire shape of the data. This derivation shows the core mechanic of the influence function, isolating a single data point's impact. Shifting away from the mean, analysts mathematically define the transformation for variance, and similarly for the third and fourth moments, skewness and kurtosis. Researchers then replace the standard dependent variable in the baseline regression with these RIF transformations. This allows ordinary least squares to estimate unconditional higher-order moments. The RIF transformation gives economists the capability to determine if a policy is polarizing a population, escaping the limits of the average. These overlapping distributions show the RIF regression applied to female cognitive development. For girls' motor and social scores, the mean held steady. However, the distribution expanded outward, representing higher variance, and sharpened at the peak, showing a sharp increase in kurtosis. The behavioral outcomes for males followed a different structural path. Instead of increasing variance at both ends, the male behavioral data reacted with a heavy, extended right tail. The policy increased externalizing behaviors, generating severe positive skewness. The p-values for these shifting shapes confirm statistical significance. The girls' cognitive data widened and peaked, while the boys' behavioral data skewed toward the extremes. Subsidized care polarized the population, introducing high variance into female cognitive development while stretching the extreme right tail of male behavioral issues. Identical access to subsidized childcare produced divergent gendered outcomes. The data requires a causal mechanism. Microeconomic theory models child development as a production function. A child's growth relies on a combination of institutional care and targeted home inputs. By lowering the relative price of external care, the policy altered the household equilibrium. It incentivized parents to substitute away from high-quality home investment. This table tracks parenting outcomes for children ages 0 to 3, providing empirical proof of the behavioral shift. After the subsidy's introduction, key parental inputs declined. Parents spent less focused time with their children and engaged in less frequent daily reading. The declines in parental investment were approximately twice as large for girls relative to boys, erasing a pre-existing gender gap in home investment. The evidence links these behavioral outcomes to parents altering their home investment strategies in response to the price subsidy. This final chart displays an econometric test proving that substitution mechanism. The authors re-estimated the baseline DID model, stepwise controlling for altered home environments. The first step injects specific parenting activities, like daily reading and focused playtime, back into the regression. The second step adds broader parenting scales, controlling for household dysfunction, consistency, and positive interaction. When controlling for all home environment variables, the negative policy effect on girls shrinks. The coefficient attenuates by roughly 75% toward zero. The inclusion of parenting variables only attenuates the boys' policy effect by roughly 20%, suggesting a different gendered response to the subsidy. Evaluating the welfare impacts of a universal intervention requires looking beyond the average treatment effect. Interrogating the higher moments of the distribution reveals the polarizing consequences that stand